Imagine my painfully shy and introverted 14-year-old daughter, May, the one who's always behind the scenes, singing a solo in front of hundreds of people at the spring chorus concert. Her sweet voice rose strong and clear as she sang, "I am beautiful in every single way." She was much better than me. Beauty, courage, and determination are not just themes of this Christina Aguilera song. They were May. Proud tears blurred my vision. My daughter was transforming right in front of me. She was luminous and confident. She was beautiful. Who was out there in your life who could drive you to be better, drive you to want to change? You may not even realize your catalyst for change may be right in front of you. A few days after my daughter's triumph adjusted my lens on beauty, I ran into JP, the guy who cleans the halls of work. He excitedly told me about his upcoming events at the Special Olympics. I'm going to do the softball toss and the 100-meter walk. Events I've almost gone to for so many years. I've always said, "I'm thrilled, JP, I should go someday." Words, void of action. This time was different. There was a gravitational pull. JP was putting himself out there for the world to see. It was time to break out of my comfort zone. It was time to be better, stronger, braver. It was time to be more like my beautiful daughter, May. "It will make your day and theirs," the email invitation read. This year I was going. Special Olympics, here I come. I had no idea what I was in for. The athlete's hard work and preparation humbled me. Imagine training for a year to walk 100 meters. As an athlete myself, I focus on the finish line. Isn't that the prize? I neglected to see the humanity and bravery of stepping up to the blocks. Before the starting line and after the finish line are strong and kind people doing extraordinary things. I had to see these athletes. I wanted to do something meaningful, something beautiful. How have I been so blind? For years, my wife Ellen has volunteered to raise funds for the special needs clients across the street. I only seem to pay attention to Louie and his friends when they not so discreetly threw treats to my dog from afar. My dog was getting fat. Helen just laughed because she saw the joy it gave them. Besides, the dog didn't seem to mind. Ellen often went to the Special Olympics to see Louie, Scott, Melvin, and others. She knew more than their names. She knew their stories and shared in their lives. I wanted to be more like my wife, more open, more kind, more giving. I wanted to be beautiful, like her. As I approached the venue, there were tents as far as the eyes could see. State troopers handing out ribbons and medals. Contagious excitement, not just for the athletes, but for the supporters, spectators, and volunteers. I saw JP, Louie, Scott, and Melvin showing off their awards. I saw my fat and happy dog garner more attention than a streaker at the Super Bowl. What I saw was unconditional joy, love, and happiness, exuding from people whose actions screamed, "I am determined, I am brave, I am beautiful." The deafening applause was just as loud for the last place athlete as for the first. On this day, everyone won, including me. There's an oath that opens every Special Olympics. Let me win. But if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. This is what I was reacting to. In the moment where courage and determination push us forward to be better than we were before, this is where true beauty thrives. These seemingly unrelated acts together became the missing puzzle pieces that spurred my actions. What started as a small white snowball with my daughter turned into an avalanche of bursting true colors that transformed me and opened my eyes. What I once looked through, I now look to for inspiration. I broke out of my comfort zone to ironically find comfort and motivation to be better, stronger, braver. I am now a proud member of the Disability Support Group at work and a committed Special Olympics volunteer. More importantly, I found some new friends. True beauty was in front of me the whole time. My final catalyst happened the next day at work. When JP exploded through the door, look at my medal. JP, I see more than your medal now. You're beautiful. Are your eyes closed to the potential beauty that may be right in front of you? What's keeping you from breaking out of your own comfort zone? What's your catalyst for change? Whether it's your daughter, your spouse or significant other, or your own JP. Open your eyes to true beauty, to be better, stronger, braver. Who is your JP? Or even what is your JP? Can you grab hold of your own transformation? Do you have the fortitude to do something to make a difference in your life and the lives of others? Do you even know the signs that can spur you to be better, stronger, braver? Your ability to cross over the threshold from change thinking to change actions may not be as far out of your reach as you think. Personal and professional success are there for the taking. We all have the ability to change who we are. We need to be flexible to change. Just look at the healthcare industry with constant reform and new medical practices. For example, hands-only CPR is now encouraged. People are being taught to push hard and fast to the beat of the song, Staying Alive, because it's supposed to have 100 beats per minute. In reality, it has 103. There is a song with 100 beats, but the medical experts are not sure they want it running through your head while you're doing it. And another one's going, and another one's going, and another one bites. Before we get too deep into the content, I want to share with you that I'm an addict. I'm addicted to Toastmasters. It has changed my life and career. I've had issues with communicating and singing. Although it's done nothing for my musical prowess, it's done wonders for my ability to stop taking 20 minutes to tell a 30-second anecdote. Let me show you how far I've come. My wife has a 9-year-old niece who was overheard at school telling a classmate, "You're not popular and nobody likes you." The teacher had to write a letter of apology. The letter came in the next day and said, "I'm sorry that you're not popular and nobody likes you." Today, as a look back on the many milestones I've passed in my life, some I noticed, some I didn't. As we go through today, I want you to look back on the potential lessons learned in your life and ask yourself, did you do anything with them? It's okay if you did, because it's not too late. Let's take a moment to think about the names of 3 people, animals, events, anything that can or have inspired you. Each may have a different reason for influence. Whether it's admiring someone's courage, lessons learned, or learning from your own mistakes. There's a constant in all of this to make it happen. And that's you. Up until a few years ago, I was inconsistent with my professional performance, often cynical, definitely defensive. I've been demoted twice in my career and told I would never reach senior management because they never saw me in the role. And I can stand in front of you today and tell you I've never been happier or more satisfied personally or professionally than I am right now. In the midst of a downturned economy, I've thrived, with more raises, promotions, and increases in job responsibilities than I could have ever imagined. I'm doing things I never dreamed of. Writing 2 books, being part of the National Speakers Association, being the official announcer at the U.S. National Toboggan Championships. Why am I telling you this? Because it took me years to figure out, but I finally got it. I needed to break out of my own painfully shy and introverted shell and look myself in the mirror. I wanted and needed to change. I wanted and needed to transform. I never believed anything was my fault, including my limited promotions, my slow growth, and my inconsistent satisfaction level. I used my defensive reactions as a protective mechanism which impacted my ability to relate to people or communicate effectively. If you don't believe me, let me share with you some quotes from my performance appraisals from my first 20 years on the job. Todd needs to be more concise in his communication style and ensure he adapts to the audience based on who he's interacting with. He needs to ask more questions for a full understanding. He needs to position his ideas with his audience in mind. He needs to be more confident in his presentations to senior management. He needs to stop second-guessing himself. He needs to avoid shutting down when others don't agree with him, and on and on and on. I've read this a couple times. My managers just didn't understand me. They had to have been copying from my previous managers from my previous review. It was never my fault and never my problem. Therefore, I didn't do anything about it. I took no actions to improve. I can't imagine why I was never promoted on my own timeline. Think back to the toughest feedback you've ever received. And ask yourself, what'd you do with it? When you're presented with the gift of feedback, you can do one of 2 things. Ignore it, or do something about it. When I first started in collections on the phone, I was an up-and-coming performer in an industry-leading company. In just 2 years, I became a consistent top performer and was given my first management role. In less than a year, I dropped morale like a rock, developed poor management habits, and received devastating focus group feedback. Apparently, being good at your former job does not guarantee you're going to become a good leader. I had every excuse in the book. I managed 30 people on my own in a 7-day-a-week shop with 12-hour shifts. My manager never gave me any feedback. It didn't help that I told anyone and everyone I ran into I should be paid extra for babysitting. For the first of 2 times in my career, I was moved for better opportunities. Code for, you've been demoted. But this isn't some hard luck story. I was a hard-working guy with raw talent just looking for a little direction. Apparently, I was waiting for others to show me the map. But today, it's about lessons in transforming yourself. Transformation is a look back on the lessons that have inspired you and motivated you about 1, self-awareness. 2, belief that you can change. 3, actions spur you to take the actions to change. Let me repeat that. 1, self-awareness. 2, belief. 3, actions. What's number 1? Self-awareness. What's number 2? Belief. What's number 3? Action. What's that spell? I have no idea. It wasn't intended to be an acronym. SPA! Milestone 1 hit me like a ton of bricks. After I was moved, I realized my former team was happier, performing better, and didn't seem to miss me. Self-awareness permeated my thoughts. Maybe it was me. A change was needed. I had been in the Delaware offices for about 4 years, and I really was a bad manager. I was put into a closet about this big to become a computer programmer. I had no technical experience. I was a communication major intentionally to avoid that stuff. I heard there were new offices going into Maine. Thought I'd talk to the executive, see if he'd give me another shot at managing. I'm not sure I was ready to change. I felt that I needed to change. The executive said he didn't see any growth potential with me as a manager, but I could go up there if I wanted in a business support role, but only after I spoke to my new potential manager. So I did. He knew who I was. First thing he said is, "Tom, do you realize you're cynical and that's not healthy for a new and emerging business?" I had never been labeled as cynical before. Sarcastic, yes. Cynical, no. I had a growing reputation and was coming to light. I was just smacked between the eyes with some feedback I apparently needed. Badly. I left the meeting having to look up the word. I had an idea of what it meant, but wanted a full understanding and context of how it related to me. It means a disbelief in sincerity in human motives. I was just a hard-working guy looking for a little success. Just got an inkling. I needed to change my ways if I wanted to taste any of that success. I was more motivated than ever. I wasn't going to let anyone or anything stop me or cause me to fail. I was still fuming over what the first guy said, telling me he didn't see me moving up or growing with the company. Another milestone. Don't let anyone tell you you're not good enough. Prove people wrong. I took that business support role and I moved to Maine. I was working extremely hard and I was getting noticed again. I was pseudo-promoted to a made-up position. I was the acting manager of managers. Then, the worst-case scenario happened. The manager who loved me moved on, and I got a new one. The new manager and I were constantly butting heads and were never on the same page. I was reverting back to my old habits. He told me I had no people skills or communication skills. I was beginning to believe I'd never get another fair shot. After another one of my Friday 5 p.m. berating beatdowns, where I was told I wasn't cutting it, I went home to hear my wife say, "Wait 3 months. One of you will be hired, fired, or moved on." Thank you. It was her way of teaching me patience. 2 months later, I was moved for better opportunities. I was demoted and moved on. My manager was double promoted. It was the happiest day of my life besides my wedding day and the day my children were born. But she was right. As I was packing up to move, I was flipping through a book I ironically received from this manager for Christmas. It landed on page 47. Surrender to the fact that life isn't fair. In the book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff by Dr. Richard Carlson. It went on to read, who said that life was going to be fair, that it was even meant to be fair? Another milestone. I needed to stop blaming others and start taking hold of my own career. My new manager simply said, "You have the 45th ranked team in the company. Make them #1. I trust you and I'm going to give you your space. I believe you can turn this team around." I had a new lease on life. I was beginning to believe in myself again. I was starting to take the right actions instead of running through the wall, looking over my shoulder and hoping that people would follow. I went to the back and provided support and encouragement as needed. I was riding their coattails. 2 months later, we were the #2 team in the company. Another milestone. Prove people right. And I did. I was promoted for real this time, and I was given an office with a door. Yes! I could shut the world out. That didn't last very long. I closed the door, and there was a sign that read, "Change is inevitable. Growth is optional." 6 simple words. Change is inevitable. Growth is optional. Another milestone. I was genuinely understanding that my ability to adapt to others and my willingness to grow personally and professionally were creating wins for everyone. I no longer wanted to just survive. I wanted to thrive and bring people along with me. I still wasn't perfect. My people skills were somewhat suffocating, and I was often micromanaging. I think that was my fear of failing again. But I was making strides. I was once described as swimming in the oceans of Maine. Initially, when you jump in, you're shocked and you can barely move. But after a while, you get kind of used to it. You get refreshed and you learn to like it. I had enough people tell me they learned under my leadership. It took some of them years to admit, but I was making a difference, eventually. I once had a manager tell me us being friends is purely a convenience, meaning our relationship isn't important. I lived with that mantra for far too long, but I was beginning to cherish these relationships. I needed them and they needed me. Besides, my newfound vulnerability of sharing all my mistakes and lessons learned with others was getting somewhat of a following. I continued my roller coaster of self-awareness, belief, and action. Slowly but surely, I was reaching my long-term and professional goals. Not on my timeline, but I was moving forward until the most impactful milestone of all. While I was on vacation 700 miles away from home, my wife's aunt walks across the yard and says, "So, I understand your company's been bought." Relaxation turned to tension. There was a flood of stress, worry, and uncertainty. I had no idea what was going to happen to me. I had no idea what was going to happen to the company. I was at an unintended crossroads. I had no desire to leave the company. It was the only company culture I knew and loved. Yes, cynical Tom said love. I put far too much time and energy into this place. I came back from vacation and started my new journey. Some people froze in the fear of losing their jobs, while others proactively dusted off their resume. I personally called a relative who worked for the new company. She had been through this just a couple years before. Her advice: control what you can control. She said, besides, with a company this large, there may even be more room for advancement. Sounded counterintuitive at the time, but she was right. Another couple of milestones. Control what I can control, and I can thrive simply by differentiating my attitude. But how can my small voice influence a company this large that was constantly in flux? I started by understanding the company mission and culture. I realized this seems basic, but the old company culture was extremely strong. Instead of bringing the best of both worlds together, some people refused to accept the new culture and outwardly spoke against it. I made the effort to embrace the new culture and openly spoke about the opportunities in front of us. I came to the realization the company wouldn't have survived without the acquisition. I too was very loyal and knew we had done many great things, but I became an early adapter to the new culture. I had a clean slate. Many of the people who caused my poor memories were no longer there, either by choice or by company direction. What did I have to lose? While some people waited for instructions, I jumped in with both feet. Made me think of one of my favorite sayings. Opportunity seldom labels itself. I found a mentor. I became a mentor. I joined Toastmasters, a flood of new milestones. Be willing to take chances, break out of my comfort zone, find a support system, and finally, stop taking myself so seriously. After I joined Toastmasters, it took almost 2 years before I practiced my first speech in front of my wife. I was on my way out the door to a speech competition in Canada where the winner would go on to the World Semifinals and be in the top 81 in the world. Seemed like a good time. I wrote a 7-minute speech about my dog, Kevin, and rescuing animals. I was so nervous I did the speech in 5 minutes. There's a line in there that says, millions of dogs and cats. I was so tongue-tied, I said millions of dogs and a cat. My wife couldn't stop laughing. She knew it was a one-time gaffe and knew the effort I put in to get to this point. I knew if I could do it in front of her, I could do it in front of anybody. My family's been there to provide me the feedback I needed to hear and provide me the support to move me forward. My communication skills and confidence level and subsequent success grew exponentially when I involved my family, friends, and colleagues in my learning process. I'm not perfect. That's not the milestone. The fact that I'm okay with it is. I now strive to better myself versus letting everything weigh me down. In the middle of another speech competition, I was the lucky contestant to have a jackhammer going off behind him. I was thrown. Years before, I would have screamed foul. Instead, I went home and I changed my practice routines to encourage distraction. I now practice my speeches when the children are playing the piano, the trombone, the xylophone. I invite the dog into the room so I can step over him while he's howling. It helps with the focus and concentration. I'm even a little less bashful. I've practiced my speech in front of my dental hygienist while in the waiting room. All are actions to improve. It has made me more open, more bold, more confident. The opportunities in front of me are endless. My ability to adapt has made me a little bit more go with the flow and a little less likely to think about the potential negative things that could happen to me. I've taken the lead in my life and career. I've taken actions to improve my attitude and destiny. Professionally, I've made more of a name for myself in the last 5 years than I had in my previous 18 combined. Personally, I'm just happier. And probably just a little easier to be around. My transformation has been slow and will constantly be in a state of evolution, but I'm on top of the world. How's your 2020 hindsight? Can you grab hold of your own milestones? You have the luxury to look back so you can look forward. Are you aware of your shortcomings? Do you believe that you can grow? Do you have a supporting cast to help you identify your blind spots and reinforce the obvious ones? I began to believe that I can make a difference. I proved people wrong. I proved people right. I stopped hoping. Because hope wasn't going to get the job done. I started taking actions for myself and for others. Change is inevitable. Growth is optional. Moving from resistance to acceptance isn't easy, but it is possible. You have a choice. Do nothing or do something about it. Be vulnerable enough that people see the real you. They'll be willing to help, but more importantly, you can transform into who you really want to be. Hold yourself accountable as if you're the only person in the room. That's when you know you've made a difference. There is no such thing as wrong place at the wrong time. There's only resistance or acceptance. Hold yourself accountable as if you're the only person in the room. Your catalyst for change may be right in front of you. Transform into who you really want to be. I'd like to end with a speech that has meant an awful lot to me personally, and has been one of the driving factors behind my own transformation. Enjoy. Are you living to die? 15 years old. My buddy Jack slipped over. He had a coughing fit for hours. It was deep and constant, and I never heard anything so frightening in my life. Jack, wake up! Oh, what? Oh, man. You don't wake a guy dreaming of beautiful twins. What's wrong? He realized he had never told me. Ladies and gentlemen, Jack had cystic fibrosis. According to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, more than 70,000 people worldwide are affected by this chronic disease that often cuts life short. The main symptom is a thick, sticky mucus. None of us know when we're going to die. Jack knew we wouldn't make it past the age of 25. He saw the look on my face, a mixture of shock, pity, and helplessness. But he told me not to worry, because it's not about dying. It's about living. Jack was 4'11" with a 5-foot smile. He lived his life the way that we all should, like we are dying. I never saw him sad, angry, or remorseful. He carried the potential burden of an early death like it was a pocket full of change. You never knew it was there until you heard the jingling. Or in his case, the coffin. Through high school, Jack was an active student with a zest for life, but unable to participate in sports. He took great joy in being behind the camera. He would often hand his candid shots of our playing and would simply say, "Live life." He also wasn't afraid of being on the other side of the camera, where he always jumped in front of yearbook pictures screaming, "Isn't life great?" He often introduced himself as Hank. There was no reason, except it was amusing. Jack went to Widener University because there was too much of life to live and learn. I went to see him his freshman year. We were stopped by a campus policeman as we were walking down the street for laughing too hard. He thought we were drunk and soon to be disorderly. We were. Still suspicious, he told me to never come back again. I told Jack I would die if my parents ever found out. He laughed. He said, "It's not about dying. It's about living." Jack had to leave college after a couple of years. Too many extended trips to the hospital. While many of us were waiting for our first legal beer, Jack was hooked up to tubes planning his own funeral. Still, the signature smile never left. He never wanted pity, but he did like a good laugh, even on the day his casket rolled up the church aisle. He had the Rolling Stones song, "You Can't Always Get What You Want," playing. I laughed and cried simultaneously for the first time ever. There was a problem. I was just handed a gift, a lesson in life at the tender age of 21. I didn't know then. Somehow I let the speed of life over the next 20 years pass me by. There's nothing wrong with my life, just the daily grind. In a hustle and bustle airport one day, I heard a faint noise. A cough, deep and constant like jazz. I then heard the song I heard 100 times since his death. I heard it for the first time. A flood of repressed memories came back. I grabbed the old yearbook when I got home. Dear Tom, many things have happened between us. You don't know how scared I was that we would never talk again. After I asked Jody to the prom, thanks for not getting mad. 4'11", and he always got the girl. I'm really glad we got to spend a lot of time together over the past couple of years. Well, I will end this, not with goodbye or good luck, but with remember to live life. Jack. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometime, well, you just might find you get what you need. I need it, Jack. Even 20 years later, he lived his life to the fullest, and I had wasted time. But I began to live my life to the fullest. I taught myself the piano. I took up fly fishing, and although terrified of heights, went up in a hot air balloon. I even wrote a book about my own professional development and transformation. We all know that we are dying. But how many of us are truly living? I went to a takeout restaurant the other night. When they asked for my name, I simply said, Hank. Are you living to die?